Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digitally Uploaded podcast. We're doing the E3 catch-up a lot thing, I guess, because E3 happened last week, and we've probably got lots to talk about, really. Or maybe not. There was content that was definitely there at the show. There was lots of content. But Matt, you're here. Hello, Matt.
Hello, yes, I'm here. I'm full of content.
You're full of content? Excellent. We're going to get all that content out of you and onto this podcast, and it's going to be glorious. We also got Trent. Hello, Trent.
Hello. I too expel content.
Yeah, we don't want your content. Just kidding. It's good to have you on as always, Trent. Okay, so we're going to talk about E3 an awful lot this week because E3 happened, and we did the predictions podcast last week, and we can talk about how completely right we were with all our predictions this week, except for The Witcher 3 on the Switch. I feel very stupid about that. I spent, 5 minutes in the last podcast saying that it's not going to happen, and Alan was like, yeah, it's going to happen, and Trent was like, it's going to happen, and it happened. So
I was on new information. You were on old information. There was like a voice actor or something which posted some information or video or some sort of thing related to that, and then people picked that up and that turned into rumors. Yeah, so you were onto the old rumor, and then there was like a new rumor after that. So yeah, we believed.
Yeah,
I believed you, Matt. I was on your side. I don't know if I said it at the time.
Yeah, I'm very sad about this. But on the plus side, at least my prediction that it'll be absolutely crap is not yet disproven. Because I don't know. They're squeezing it onto a 32 gigabyte cartridge or something with the 2 DLCs on the Switch in its glorious 580p resolution. I just don't know how that's going to work. But anyway, we'll go to some music, some Hatsune Miku music. Unfortunately, there was no Hatsune Miku at the E3. I was looking forward to her announcement on Smash, but she wasn't. Some stupid banjo or something instead. We'll come back and we'll talk about E3 games and stuff.
形のない気持ち忘れないように決まりていたレイアウトを消した一口ずさんだフレーズを捕まえて胸に秘めた言葉のせ空に飛び放つ君に伝えたいこと「
Welcome back from that lovely bit of music. I'm sure Alan really enjoyed editing that into the podcast. It's always good fun when Alan's not on the podcast. I can hit him with the worst music and then he has no choice. It's his punishment for not being here. Okay, so yes, E3 happened, and I think we can all agree that Nintendo was the best of the show, the pick of the show. It was a pretty good direct that Nintendo threw.
Oh, it was an average direct.
It was an average direct. Yeah, I know. I mean, it was very disappointing that Banjo and Kazooie was announced as one of the DLC characters for Smash. This really, it's going to hang me up for months and months. He's a terrible character, and I cannot stand that he's in that game. But anyway.
See, I'm not about the character. Like, I don't care that the character's announced. My problem is Nintendo was pandering to a certain segment of the community, which made them announce Metroid 4 way too early. Like, there's a vocal community in the Nintendo community which just wants crap. And they just are really loud, and they're really annoying, and they're really obnoxious, and then they get their way, and we don't get Animal Crossing until next year. But for good reason, though. Health and life balance is very important.
I mean, that's not because of Metroid. Metroid's coming out like way after that. They had to restart development from scratch.
Yeah, Metroid had problems.
They announced it too early. That's true, but I don't think
It is.
Metroid's fault that Animal Crossing is.
No, I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm just saying it's the segment of community which asks for Metroid. It's the same segment of community which is like, asking for this Banjo-Kazooie, and it's pandering to them in because they're really loud, really obnoxious on the internets, complaining about things. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if Nintendo didn't pander to its community to some degree, it probably wouldn't be around anymore. So
they could
yeah,
be pandering to Miku fans though a bit more, I think.
Well, they really should. I'm really upset that I'm honestly crushed that Miku is not in Smash now. This is not funny anymore. I've been telling Nintendo for God knows how long that she should be in there, and they're just not listening. And this hurts. It hurts my feelings, Matt.
Maybe you need a catchy catchphrase and not a catchphrase. What do the kids call it these days? Hashtags. That's what they are. Get a catchy hashtag.
Yeah, it's gimme Miku. The hashtag is gimme Miku, and they just don't pay attention. I've seen
Smashies Miku.
I email them about that all the time. I'm probably on their block list now. But yes, so there were two characters announced for Smash. The other one's actually pretty cool. Dragon Quest Hero. He's a pretty cool dude.
See, I was watching it live, and the level of trolling in the way they did those announcements was top notch. This guy, which doesn't even have a name, he's just Hero. Turns out the leak was right. The data in the game or whatever they found, we said Hero was right. It was actually a character called Hero from Dragon Quest. And then, right near the end, it was like this. I think they did the joke before on one of the older Smash Bros. Trailers where they did the Duck Hunt dude and he goes to the shape of the character and then it turns out it's the Duck Hunt guy and it's like, oh no! They should have just cut the trailer then.
Yeah. I'm really not sure what you're on, Trent. To be honest.
I didn't watch it live, so
yeah, I didn't watch it live actually either. So I'll take your word for it, Trent. It was,
all the reactions on the internet were like, "Oh no!" It's like this Hero dude.
The direct actually happened at 2 a.m. in Australian time, so I was not going to be awake for that, unfortunately. So I haven't caught up with it. Obviously, I caught up with all the news. I've seen all the little trailers that were released through it, and yeah, it was a pretty good stream of stuff. Animal Crossing was the big one, of course. It's been slightly delayed, which for some reason apparently cost Nintendo a lot of money. Their stock price plummeted after.
Stock price plummets after every direct vote. It's not really a new sensation. Yeah,
I don't know if the link is quite as clear as certain websites out there were making it out to be, but there were people that were the Nintendo's price did drop, and people draw the conclusion that was because Animal Crossing was delayed slightly, but whatever.
The actual comments from investors were they wanted Nintendo to have revealed some streaming technology, and they wanted the new Nintendo Switches at the E3, and there was some random game they wanted as well. That seems to be the comments.
Yeah, investors aren't the brightest bunch of people, so we won't talk about them because who wants to talk about the business side of video games? It's boring.
Yes, let's talk about Animal Crossing.
We'll get back to the streaming thing though, because that was an interesting trend through E3. We'll talk about that in a later podcast, a later section. But yeah, some of the other highlights, I guess, from that direct were the Saga. No, that was Square Enix, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The Mana collection actually was announced and dropped. It came out straight away, and I've been playing it, and it is amazing. I love my Mana. Mana is very precious to me, and that's a pretty good collection. I don't know. Did you get it, Matt? Because I know you're pretty keen.
But I will at some point when I have money.
It does cost money, these contents.
Fortunately, money contests cost money.
It does. What else was announced? Nothing else was. Oh, the Necrodancer.
Yeah, that dropped for release day.
Cadence of what's it called? Cadence of
Hyrule.
Hyrule, that's the one. I haven't had a chance to look into that yet, but it looks great, and it's been turning heads, I think, since it came. So I
started playing it, but I'm not too sure about it yet because one, I'm like one of those weird people which when people like take Zelda and turn it into a game, like Hyrule Warriors. I really hated that game just because it was like, oh, this is my Zelda. Like I was complaining, but like like I want more Zelda in my like third-party spin-offs. So I want to give it a chance because I haven't played the original actual game it's spun off on, so I want to give it a chance. But so far, I'm just like, this is really weird. That whole rhythm mechanic is just driving me up the wall.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say if you don't like that, then you're probably not gonna like the rest of the game.
I'm just too unco. I click the button, and it's like, no, missed action. I'm like, no.
That's the core of the game, I would say.
Yeah, it is a rhythm game, really. That I think it's quite brilliant what they've done. I'm certainly keen to see what they do with the Zelda tracks and music with this licensed one. I think it's great that Nintendo is actually licensing out its most valuable franchise to an indie developer. Yeah. That's a really nice thing for Nintendo to do. Commercially, it makes sense too because it helps to broaden the base, I guess, of stuff that Nintendo's doing with its franchises. But speaking of that, Nintendo did also hint that there's another Zelda game on the way, which takes place. Well, didn't hint; they confirmed it. Which takes place in the same world as Breath of the Wild, which is pretty cool for people who enjoyed Breath of the Wild. I don't know. I'm still stuck on the plateau from the original game. I never got past that tutorial. But anyway, what else?
One of these days you'll finish that game, Matt.
One of these days I'll come back and I'll finally work out how to get across that bloody river. What else was happening? What was the cool stuff for you, Matt? What did you like?
I'm trying to remember. I think you already mentioned the Mana stuff, which is what I was most excited about. So there was Collection of Mana, which is a localization of the collection that came out in Japan a couple of years ago, which includes the first 3 games. So there is Final Fantasy Legend, which was a Game Boy game originally, Secret of Mana, which everyone knows, and then the third game, which was called Seiken Densetsu 3, which is just the name of the series in Japan, so it never really had an English name until now, because it's never been released outside Japan before now, officially, and they've called it Trials of Mana, and that I think is particularly what's exciting about that, just because it's a very good game, and I think one of the high points of back when they were Squaresoft, at their best in the Super Nintendo days, and that was a game that really deserved to get a worldwide release, but never did. And fortunately, some dedicated fans translated it, and so it was playable.
I tell you what, it's got a pretty brutal opening.
Yeah.
Like it's really brutal. I don't know if it's different depending on which character you choose, because I'm only playing through the one character at the moment. But
yeah,
I picked the mage girl, and the opening scene is her. She's like a princess to a kingdom, and she does the princess thing and wanders into the throne room to say hello to Mum. And Mum's like, "Yeah, you're useless. We're going to sacrifice you." And she's like, "What? Yeah. Okay, this is." I was like, "Whoa, that's an interesting start." But yeah, it's good so far. It's actually really good. I'm loving it. I think it's
really good.
It's a gorgeous game, and it's really nice characters and environments. Like the whole setting is stunning, and I am a big Mana fan, but never played this one, so I'm loving the chance to get into it.
So will I love it if I liked Octopath?
Very different
It's a
games.
very different sort of game. Did you like Secret of Mana?
I liked Breath of Fire. Breath of Fire. Yes.
It's a very different. It's
They're very different games again.
It's an action RPG. So like, if you like Secret of Mana, if you like
I've never played any of the Mana tiles.
if you like The Legend of Zelda,
Yes, Zelda. So it's like Zelda.
Only an RPG.
yeah,
You don't want to say that it's like Zelda, and then I'll be like, I'll have that frame set in my mind. I'll sit down, I'll start playing it, and 5 seconds into the game, I'll throw my DS or whatever it is into the wall.
Well, I mean,
like-
this collection's good for you anyway, Trent, because it has Secret of Mana on there as well, and everybody should
it's
play
also a
Secret
very
of
good
Mana.
game.
Yeah.
But then the other thing they announced sort of at the same time was, as well as this collection, they are doing a remake of that same game. And
I wanted to. That is an actual remake, is it, of the
it
same?
is a full remake, yeah, which has been
That's nice. That's
apparently
nice.
in development for some time, and initially had been planned only for Japanese release, but then there was enough interest and fan demand that they decided to localize it as well. And I want to be hopeful. It looks really good, like from the screenshots and trailers and stuff, but also there was that Secret of Mana remake.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm a little bit. I was a little bit concerned by the look of it, because it did look like it was heading down that same path, and the Secret of Mana remake was a travesty. But
Yeah.
to be fair, there was another Mana remake which actually turned out quite well, which was the one, the Game Boy one.
Yeah, that was good. That was really
The
good.
remake of that is actually a pretty high quality game.
Yeah.
You can get on mobile and Vita, and I think that's it, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So, I mean, that turned out to be really good. The Secret of Mana one was terrible, but 50-50, I guess, which is pretty much about on par for Square Enix and remakes. 50-50 chance it'll actually be worth playing.
Yeah.
On other topics, I mean, the other thing that really impressed me, I guess, with the Switch and the Nintendo Direct was just how many re-releases or ports are coming of some pretty good quality games. Like Alien Isolation is coming, which is really good. I'm really looking forward to that. I loved Alien Isolation. Being able to play it on the go is a pretty nice thing. On the horror track, there's also a port coming of The Sinking City, which is the upcoming Lovecraftian horror game, which I'm really looking forward to. Now that I know it's coming on Switch, I'll probably give that the go. We talked about The Witcher 3 coming, which is a nice one. Certainly a big game, that one. And then, the big one, the big news is that absolutely terrible Bethesda Elder Scrolls mobile game is coming to Switch, and I don't know why this is a big news thing, but it was a big news thing for some reason. And my Twitter feed has been full of Nintendo actually promoting that this game is coming to Switch, and it's terrible. I don't know why they're doing it, but it's terrible.
It does. I think the one single tweet I've seen about it from someone was saying something along the lines of, well, Skyrim's already on Switch, so why would you
exactly. Why would you play Elder Scrolls Blades?
Yeah.
Blades.
One thing you haven't mentioned, Matt, that I feel like you're excited about is No More Heroes 3.
Oh, yes. Gee, how can I forget that? My good pal Goichi Suda, he's actually doing another No More Heroes game. I think I'm a little bit disappointed because it's not Lollipop Chainsaw 2. I was really gunning for that. I keep asking him every time I've met him, and I've met him 4 times now. I keep asking him what he's doing with this Lollipop Chainsaw, and he keeps throwing No More Heroes at me. And I don't necessarily understand why, but I'll take it.
I feel like maybe No More Heroes is probably more commercial. Maybe, just maybe.
Lollipop Chainsaw was actually a big hit. It actually sold really well. I think it was up there with his biggest seller. Which is why Warner Brothers, which published the game, actually wanted to work with him again for the next one, which was Killer is Dead, and that sold absolutely dismally. So I don't think Goichi Suda is working with Warner Brothers again, but Lollipop Chainsaw actually was a big hit for them. But anyway, that's not coming, unfortunately. But No More Heroes 3 is, and it looks really cool. It looks very Goichi Suda, and I really enjoyed. I do enjoy that series. I enjoyed Travis Strikes Again Travis Strikes Again on the Switch, which was released earlier in the year. So, yeah, give me No More Heroes and giant fighting robots and Travis touchdown, and I'm pretty cool.
There was also that Dark Crystal game.
Oh, yes, and how did I forget that? So that was a really interesting one, wasn't it? Because, I mean, we knew that Netflix was dipping its toe in the game development industry because it had the Stranger Things 3 game coming anyway. But this one looks like a much more mature project. Stranger Things 3 looks like a fairly simple little top-down RPG thing. It looks basically like a tie-in game, whereas this one looks like a proper game. With a full tactics RPG. It looks very Final Fantasy Tactics meets Dark Crystal, which is just cool. I mean, I don't know how anybody could not be excited for that. I am.
I was just disappointed it wasn't a Legend of Zelda TV show reveal.
I mean, the only thing that could have made it even better would be if David Bowie showed up in it. And there was like a crossover with Labyrinth, because that would be great. Like Labyrinth Tactics with David Bowie. That didn't happen, sadly.
Yeah, you can't have
You never know.
Keanu Reeves and David Bowie at the same.
Oh, yes, Keanu. Keanu showing up. He didn't show up at the Nintendo Direct, but he did show up at E3 and did things. Did very Keanu things, which people loved him for. But I like Keanu because he said that he's a big fan of ballroom dancing in an interview.
Oh, does he?
recently. Yeah,
He's also a big fan of puppies, so
he's a pretty cool guy, I think. Like, he seems one of the few genuine guys in Hollywood, so I give him the benefit of the doubt. If he likes Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever it's called, then good on him.
he probably doesn't like it. He probably is just getting paid a lot to do it.
Yeah. On that note, we'll go to some music. Let's get some music from something that Nintendo announced. Let's get some Fire Emblem music. It won't be from Fire Emblem 3 Houses because that's not out yet. But we'll get some Fire Emblem music for you to listen to, because that's one thing we didn't chat about in this thing, but I mean, that's coming very soon and it looks really cool. I can't wait to play it. So. Okie dokie, we're back. So the other stage show conference thing that was kind of the highlight of E3 was the Square Enix one, We do like Square Enix. And they had a pretty good show, I think, overall. I don't know about you guys. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
I was at work. Was I? Or was it in the morning? I can't remember now.
I mean, it was in the morning. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning here in Australia. It was all very well. Most of it was actually quite retro themed. Actually, Square Enix dipping into a lot of its titles of the past. I mean, the highlight for me was Final Fantasy VIII. They finally found the code for that, which is great. So they're doing a HD port of it.
Probably off some ROM site.
I don't think they found the code so much as
reversed engineered it off the score. Yeah.
But
Well, however
they're splitting hairs.
However they got it, I really don't care. The fact is they're making the game again, which is what's important here.
Yeah.
And it's actually looks really good. There are comparisons out there of the original versus what the remake looks like, the remaster, and the HD effect is good. The characters look good, and I'm really keen on it.
It looks like they've redone the models for the characters rather than just kind of slapped a higher resolution texture over the top.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It definitely looks like their new character models, much more detailed than those originals could have ever been. So,
looks like a PS2 game.
It does. It looks nice. I'm just hoping, I guess the one thing that I can't really see from what they've shown so far is whether those pre-rendered backgrounds look odd with the high-res characters over the top, because that's kind of an issue I have with both Final Fantasy 7 and 9 on the Switch and the HD versions of those. They haven't done anything to the pre-rendered backgrounds, but they've put these kind of high-definition characters over the top of them, and it looks odd to me. So I guess I'm a little bit concerned about that with this one.
I think it's the same in this one. I think I saw a couple of screenshots that kind of
that's a downer.
Suggested that.
That's definitely a downer. But I do come to Final Fantasy VIII for the story anyway, and obviously that's not going to change. So yeah, that was a really good announcement. The Saga collection also getting a localization, because in the last section of the podcast we talked about the Mana collection getting one. They're also doing the Saga collection, which is I think 3 titles, is it?
No, so there's no. I didn't see anything about a collection, but they're doing Romancing Saga 3.
I thought it was a collection.
No,
for some reason.
And so, well, Romancing Saga 2 they've already released, and that was like maybe 2 years ago, I think. And that was also another game that from the Super Nintendo era of Square that never got released outside Japan. Then a couple of years ago, they just were like, hey, by the way, this game's out now on mobile, and we've localized it. Surprise. And so I think that was for me anyway, that was very exciting. A, because it's a good game, but also because it showed that Square was kind of, at least could see the value in finally localizing games that are 20 years old. But then at E3 they announced Romancing Saga 3 was getting the same sort of treatment, but I think it's coming to Switch as well. And that's very exciting because, again, that is a very, very good game that has developed its own sort of cult following thanks to fan translations and the like. And there's that, and there's also another game in the series, a newer game called Saga Scarlet Grace, which was, I think it was a PS Vita game originally that came out in Japan about 3 or 4 years ago, and they're localizing that. So
that might have been where I got confused, because I saw a bunch of Saga and I just assumed it was all together in the package. So
it was kind of and it was a really weird announcement because they had like both games in one trailer, and so for a while I was like, wait, some of these screenshots are like kind of 16-bit SNES screenshots, and some of them are 3D things, and like, is this a remake or what's going on? But then eventually they cleared it up.
Well, that makes much more sense now, I guess. But yeah, that's good. So Saga, I do enjoy the Saga series, and it is one that has not had much love in terms of Western translations. So that's a good thing. I saw in the post series of interviews that Square Enix did that they're actually very, very keen on preserving their back catalogue.
Mm.
That seems to be a real theme for the company at the moment, and they're looking for ways of doing that. At the moment, they're obviously re-releasing and or localizing games that haven't been localized in the past, but they were looking at potentially doing cloud services and all that kind of stuff to really get all of their back catalogue together and preserve it, which I think is good. I think it's nice that at least one publisher out there is starting to realize that this stuff does need to be preserved. So yeah, that was definitely a trend through the Square show. What else? I mean, what else did we see? We saw some weird shooter thing that for some reason
Outriders gets to shoot stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the developer behind the Bulletstorm, for some reason, Square Enix is working with them to produce a game, and that was a real low point for the whole event for me. I was like, oh, God, why are you doing this, Square? Why are you doing this to yourselves? They're also publishing Techland's zombie open world thing, Dying Light 2. Dying Light was all right. It was all right. So I guess that's probably that'll be a commercial hit for them, I think. That was pretty good.
I honestly thought that there already was a Dying Light 2, and so it shows how much I pay attention to Techland's zombie open world games.
Yeah. You've obviously got to be a fan of them in the first place, otherwise you can miss this stuff. But yeah, I think that's all right. And then the big announcement, I guess, for Square Enix was Avengers. We got the first look at the Avengers game, which the Tomb Raider studio has been working on for however many years now. And yeah, it looks all right, I think.
No. I feel like, well, if you look at the comics and stuff, they do look like they're being taken out of the comics. But the problem is the fans have gotten so used to what they see on the big screen where they're basically like, okay, this obviously works in the comic. It makes it look, fun and quirky. But in any actual media which other people want to consume, it's way too nerdy or stupid or unrealistic. Whereas these games, they're just overly muscly, like, people with the ones with the suits. The suits look weird. Like Iron Man's suit looks like it's a Cyberman from what's that show? Doctor Who. Like, it's just a whole mess. And the faces look like some sort of uncanny valley. It's horrible. And so it's getting so much more backlash than even Nintendo's horrible issue with Pokemon not having a national dex. Like, it's all over the internet.
I found all of that quite confusing, like people complaining about the characters not looking like the movie actors or whatever. And I was like, well, if you kind of compared the movie actors to the comic books, they don't look the same. It's just the interpretation of the characters. I don't have an issue with the game, like visually. I think it looks fine.
I think, for me, it's more the issue of the whole rest of the game is... So it seems like they've gone to such great lengths to try and capture the same sort of visual style as the movie, just in terms of the art direction and the sort of photorealism kind of thing. And then they've got characters that kind of sort of look like the movie actors, but not really. And so it's this weird sort of disjointed thing where it looks like someone's tried to recreate the visual style of the movie and done a bad job of it rather than just making a new game with its own sort of identity. And I think that's, for me, what makes it look really just weird and unappealing.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. But I guess for me, that was kind of the issue with the Spider-Man game as well. Like, I don't think that Insomniac came up with a particularly unique identity for the Spider-Man game either. So I'm willing to give the Avengers a chance on that level. And I think as long as because we all know it's going to be a fairly big, or it's going to be a big blockbuster style action game. I'm certainly checking my expectations in terms of it having any kind of intellectual depth or any kind of strength, narrative strength beyond the explosions and the characters and some puns in there.
But that's the whole point of an Avengers movie. It's got to be like big bangs.
Exactly. I'm certainly not expecting it to be any more than that, but I think it looks like it's going to deliver that, which I guess is good. I mean, I really enjoy the Avengers movies. I kind of watch them all, so on that basis, I assume I'm going to enjoy the game as well. In the same way that I kind of enjoyed Spider-Man. I mean, I didn't think it was the Citizen Kane of video games, as certain other people out there claimed, simply because it was that big blockbuster and fun game. But I thought it was fun. And
it definitely was a bit of a generic open world game. But the problem is, I guess, well, not really a problem, but Spider-Man sort of came out after so many other Marvel games were released, and they weren't really that great. And then Spider-Man comes out. It's the first time it's big blockbuster, AAA, and people are like, this is great, this is exciting, and the characters didn't really look that bad. You might say they don't look good, but they didn't like.
I didn't say they don't look good. I said they don't. They didn't look like the movie, even though they looked in the general ballpark of the movie. I think that's the
the aesthetic. Yeah. Well, Spider-Man wasn't really, I guess, overcome by that because the new Spider-Man wasn't a thing yet, and so we hadn't really grown to like a certain picture of what Spider-Man should be yet. So I think that's probably why. It's like because Spider-Man wasn't in the MCU when Spider-Man was released as a game.
I think you got the order around the other way then, Drew.
Because they came out roughly the same time. I don't know. It was like years ago.
Spider-Man was definitely introduced into the MCU well before the game came out because there was the
Civil War for like
Civil
5
War
seconds.
So the point was that the game was definitely a deviation from the cinema and the comic book, and I think the Avengers is the same. So that's fine. I'm not expecting to be disappointed by the Avengers game. I think it's going to deliver on what it promised, and that's cool. I guess from Square Enix, the one that I'm much more concerned about, the one I don't think is going to deliver on its promises, is the Final Fantasy VII remake. And I think that's, even though I wasn't a big fan of Final Fantasy VII, never have been, I still think they're going to screw it up completely, to be honest, based on that trailer. I don't think it looks good at all.
I was pleasantly surprised by the trailer.
Ooh, debate time. Okay.
Yeah. I have also been very skeptical of the whole thing, and particularly like this move to make an action combat system. And I was like, why? But I think the battle system from that trailer, it seems like it's managed to find a good balance between trying to be an action game for some reason, and also still having the sort of,
I'll tell you what, Matt,
tactical element of an ATB system.
I'll tell you what, I was the ATB system. Don't get me started on that. It was so. The guy up there on stage, the American guy, was introducing it, and he was just like so dude bro enthusiastic about this stuff. Anyway, he was going on about how, this is such a cool ATB system. And it's like, this is not the ATB system. They've come up with a completely different system, and they've called it ATB in order to make it look like it's part of Final Fantasy VII. This is an entirely different combat system, and if you're going to call something ATB, it needs to look like and behave like the ATB system. I
think it looks like it does. It's an ATB system, except you can move around and do weak attacks in between choosing your actual commands. I
don't know. For me, it looks more like Final Fantasy 15 style combat, which is it's still tactical, and it kind of behaves a little bit like a turn-based game, but at the same time, it's not. And I just think that ATB has a certain connotation about how it behaves because it is a kind of classical approach to turn-based combat. And I don't think Square Enix is served well by trying to redefine that system. And I don't think with Final Fantasy 15, they weren't out there calling it an ATB system. So I don't know why they need to try and do that smoke and mirrors with this one. Just call it an action system and be done with it. But for me, I guess the real concern I have with Final Fantasy VII Remake is that they seem to be pulling back on some of the themes of Final Fantasy VII for reasons I'm not quite sure about. Like there's it's a little bit hard to tell, I guess, because the trailers and all that were focused entirely on the combat rather than storytelling for some reason. But there seems to be, there's a scene where in the original Final Fantasy VII, basically Cloud and Co. indulge in some eco-terrorism because they're trying to save the world from these greedy corporations that are exploiting the planet to death, to literal death. And in the game, there seems to be an implication that that event isn't triggered by these guys, therefore they're not quite the eco-terrorists that they were in the original game. Now, if that's the case, then I'm going to be all kinds of disappointed with this game. Yeah.
I don't think. I'm not sure.
I mean, that's how I read it.
Was it less global warming? Like,
Are
come
you
on.
talking about the when the Scorpion sets off the bomb?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they still were the ones who broke in and planted the bomb, and were about to set the timer on it before the Scorpion attacked them, and then set the timer anyway.
Yeah, but it's still a step back, you know.
And there is still that same sort of.
I mean, the
snippets of the aftermath where they're talking about basically, oh shit, what have we actually done? And Barrett's like, well, sometimes you have to make sacrifices for, and which I mean was all present in the original as well. There was that same sort of, particularly with, I think, like Jesse was kind of didn't really realize the implications of setting that bomb until afterwards, and suddenly there is that conversation that you can have with her where she kind of wonders if they've been doing the right thing, and Barrett has his point, which is like, well, yeah, sometimes you have to break some eggs.
Yeah, but there's a difference between having it done by your own hands and then a giant scorpion setting like the timer. Like, yes, you put the bomb there, but like, come on, you didn't really do anything.
Yeah,
I mean, you made the bomb and planted it, and
what if you're transporting the bomb? What if you were like, you know, I've got this bomb, you know, it's just in my backpack, you know, I'm gonna take this to the next dungeon, and then it's like, oh no, scorpion out of the way. I don't know.
It's just the framing of it, I guess. It's just, I don't know. Maybe it is just this, the specific way that they showed what they've showed so far. And this is why I guess it would have been nice to see more than just a focus on the combat side of things. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII's strength as a game was always that narrative, and if they've slightly reframed things, it might not work as well. I guess this is my concern. Where I said, like I said, I don't think I think the Avengers is just going to deliver what it was expected. I don't know if Final Fantasy VII Remake is, and that's. I don't think E3 really resolved that for me. So I've been skeptical of the game. I'm still very skeptical of it.
I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is always kind of. It's such a widely beloved game, the original, that the remake is never going to quite be everything that everyone who loves the original wants it to be. And
well, that's the thing.
I mean, in that sense, it's kind of like, why do the remake at all? It seems doomed from the start. But then I would have said the same thing about Resident Evil 2, and everyone seemed to love the remake of that. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm open to the idea that this remake will actually make me like Final Fantasy VII, because I was not a fan of Final Fantasy VII. I haven't been historically. I've never really enjoyed that one within the context of the other Final Fantasy games. But yeah, it's still a game where there's certain things I don't want to see them mess with, and it seems like they might be. Not guaranteed they will be, but they might be. I think one thing we can all agree on, though, is that the audience in that was really annoying. And I wish, I don't know why they need to have audience sounds in the live streams of these things. Like, they're just so loud and obnoxious that you can't even hear what's being said in the trailer. Yeah,
especially when it's all paid for nonsense. Like, it's overperformed Don't even get me started on the crowds, because that was such a it just
And
it annoys me so much the way
when-
that I mean, Bethesda was much worse than Square Enix, but
I didn't watch the Bethesda one, so I didn't. And
gives me a headache.
the loudest cheers came when whoever it was said that there's 2 Blu-ray discs worth of content.
Yeah, I know. They cheer over the
Everyone lost
dumbest
their
things.
mind.
Like in Bethesda, I'm kidding you. I'm not even joking about this. In Bethesda, they were talking about stuff they're adding to Fallout 76, right? The game that they're trying to save from
Oh yeah,
absolute pile of crap. And one of the big features of something they were adding to Fallout 76 is dialogue trees. And, I kid you not, they're up there and they said, "Oh, this content expansion or whatever it was has dialogue trees," and then the entire audience just went ballistic over this. You have to go and check it out because it's just surreal, and it's like dialogue trees. Really, you're getting excited for having options in dialogue, and yeah,
The conference in general had some very dude bro,
it's
very
so
weird lines.
it's just so false, and it just gives the idea that you have to manufacture enthusiasm for these games is not a good look for the
we lost Matt.
We are all broken.
I don't know if you're still talking, Matt, but if you are, we can't hear you.
hear me anymore. Okay.
Oh, there, now you come back.
Yeah,
There you
okay.
are. Welcome back.
For a second. Well, that was an interesting. This is the great thing about doing recordings live. Anyway, we're going to go to some music, and we're going to go to some music from. Pick a song, Matt.
Shall we pick something from Final Fantasy VII?
Okay.
Shall we pick
Stuff.
Genova because it's the only good track on the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack?
Yeah, it's better than One Winged Angel anyway. Useless song.
Don't worry, they'll never actually.
They'll never get to that.
The remake will never actually catch up to the part of the game where that song plays, so we'll never have to listen to it.
I know, they don't even know how many chapters it's going to have yet. How do you write a story and not know how many chapters it's going to have? Welcome back, everybody. So, other than Square Enix and Nintendo, there wasn't that much that happened in E3 that was really worth talking about. So, for the third section of our podcast, we're just going to talk about generally the scraps of what was left. Actually, no, that's a little bit disingenuous. Devolver Digital had a pretty cool show.
And they had the pre-show again this year.
Yeah, they had a pretty good show, and they got some pretty cool little games coming along. They're a crafty little developer, publisher, that one. So, yeah, all their stuff was interesting and worth checking out, I guess. Who else had pretty good shows?
Limited Run, running like 1 billion games again.
Yeah, Limited Run. That was pretty cool seeing them at the show, actually, because some people do still like their games physicals. And it's good that they're doing so many different releases for those audiences, for that audience. I guess we did kind of preempt it earlier in the podcast, but one of the things that was a trend, I guess, for the whole show was this emergence of streaming services.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, streaming services. It's the new content.
Shoot
So-
me in the head.
Yeah, in addition to Google doing their thing, were they actually at the show? Oh, they did. They had a little thing during the PC event, I think. So Google have their Stadia coming along, which is not particularly interesting to Australians and New Zealanders because it's not launching here. So big deal. But Bethesda announced that they've got a streaming service coming. I can't remember what it's called because there's no way in hell I'll be buying into that. Ubisoft's got one.
You can stream Skyrim.
Yes, stream Skyrim rather than put a disc in the console and just play it anyway. Ubisoft has one coming as well. Uplay Plus, because so many people love Uplay.
Oh, that's more of a Game Pass thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a Game Pass
yeah.
streaming service?
No, it's Game Pass.
Okay.
Just a
Okay.
subscription type thing, which is also, I mean, I'm really just already tired of all the different game subscription services before any of them are even out. Like, there's already too many TV subscription services now, and like, you can't subscribe to all of them, and nobody's going to subscribe to all of them, and it's well, I guess it's like the whole games as a service thing where everyone wants to be the one subscription service that every person is subscribed to, and but nobody can be that one, and it just means that everything gets fragmented and becomes a pain to manage.
Yeah, I mean, just if you just went through, I guess, your entertainment options now and the way that people consume content. Let's imagine that you're a fairly standard person and you've got a Spotify or Apple Music, you've got a Netflix, you've got maybe another TV streaming service because, Netflix doesn't have it all.
Stan
in Australia, but Disney's got one coming too. So
Disney Plus, yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Amazon one. There's
an Amazon one, and then if you're into your Japanese stuff, you've got Crunchyroll and maybe also Anime Lab. So that's another 2. That's like 6 subscription services, each costing $10 to $20 per month.
And then in America, you've got Hulu.
Now, and then you add what's coming with the games ones. You'll have a subscription to Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo for the online stuff. Then you'll also have to buy the EA one and then the Ubisoft one. And then, if you buy into Stadia because you're interested in that, that's another subscription. So you're right, Matt. You're looking at 10. You could easily, effortlessly subscribe to 10 services just to cover the stuff that you're actually interested in. And that's ridiculous because after you spend all that money each month, what money's left to buy games?
See, what
And that's the big
Microsoft at least got right was they've merged the Gold and the Game Pass, so now there's Game Pass Ultimate. It's literally the same price as buying just one of them. Like it's slightly a discount, so it's like $15, $16 a month depending on what region you're in, and you get your Game Pass on your PC or your Xbox, and you get your Gold. It's like a great idea. Like everyone should do that.
It's not good for the industry.
no.
It's really not good for the industry, and it's not just not good because streaming services devalue games and all that. That's a conversation we've had in the past. The real problem here is now people subscribe to so much stuff, they got no money left to buy games at all. individual games. So every game has to be built around this model of being on a subscription service, and the things that subscription service require in order to make it worth the while for the developer, as stuff that's not good for the creative side of the games. Like, games need to be as long as possible. They basically need to be endless to rack up the number of hours that people use them, because that's how people get paid when they've got their games on subscription services. So all the stuff that kind of happened to mobile games, because it's impossible to release a premium game on Apple now, because
nobody will buy it.
Yeah, the free-to-play model has become so dominant there. All that is coming to video games as well, to all video games. And I don't know, some people maybe are cool with playing stuff like The Division and Overwatch and all that stuff endlessly, and Fortnite, and that's all they're interested in. But for those of us who are interested in more story-driven stuff, in more creative stuff, in more niche stuff, that's under a real threat under these kind of subscription services that are becoming so dominant. And that was a real downside to E3 for me. I was not amused by any of this stuff at all.
Yeah, and Square Enix is talking about doing one as well.
Yeah,
which, and if there was one that I was going to subscribe to, it would probably be that one. And also because they mainly talked about it in the context of their classic games and making all their old stuff available.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was done in the context of the maintaining the old library of games, and I'm certainly all for that, I guess. But again, it's still taking money out of what I could be spending on new games.
See, I like these types of services for, like, especially Game Pass has been really good. Because when like I want to play games with my friend who's like interested in like completely different games to what I'm interested in, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to pay like $60 for like a game I'm going to play like 5 hours of, or like 3 hours of, and never again. Like, so I just get it on Game Pass and just download it and be like, yes, I've got Halo, we can play it multiplayer, or I've got, the latest Division, let's play it multiplayer. And then suddenly we've both got the games which we need, and we can both play the game. And then, in a year's time, when we're both not busy again, we can play the games again. It's great like that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's saying that it's not. It's definitely good value, and they all will be, just for the amount of stuff that you get with your subscription. But it's more just the market is already getting flooded with options that are just going to make it harder for people to actually choose what to get and find what they need. And we'll start seeing, as we're already seeing with the TV stuff, there'll be more and more things where it's like, well, the only way you can play this game is if you subscribe to this particular service, and that you would never otherwise subscribe to. It's just going to be Game of Thrones all over again.
Yeah, that's I guess the issue. I mean, for example, with TV, if you're a fan of, if you're a fan of Stranger Things, let's say, and you're also a fan of James Bond, you need to subscribe to two separate services now, because in Australia, Stranger Things is on Netflix and James Bond is on Stan. So that's the way that they're also designed makes it very hard to unsubscribe from them. They're designed to make you not want to. They're designed to take the money out of your account almost without really paying attention to it once you're signed up. So
it's kind of like gambling, because you're like, well, it's only $10 a month, but then you realize you have like 50 other services, which is only $10 a month.
Well, that's exactly it. They all accumulate, and then all of a sudden you're paying an awful lot of money for this stuff. And then, like I said, you don't have the money to buy things outright and support those developers or creators that aren't able to put their stuff on these services, or don't get any value from putting their stuff on this. I mean, if you look at what the music streaming stuff has done, it's made it a lot harder for independents. It's made it a lot harder for independent acts. They're relying more and more now on doing live stuff, because the likes of Spotify mean that they don't make any money from their music anymore, like from selling music. And
And they don't make any money from the royalties from Spotify, even if they do go on Spotify.
Yeah, exactly. If they put their stuff on the way that Spotify works, the only way you actually make any money from putting your music on Spotify is if millions of people are listening to you, which is fine if you're a major actor with a huge amount of marketing budget behind you. But if you're doing something that's niche, if you've got a small audience, if you're deliberately aiming to that small audience, then you don't get that. Now, I'm not saying that video games will be the same. I think one of the interesting things is that Netflix seems to be kind of the other way, where Netflix is actively investing in niche stuff because their goal is to get the biggest audience as possible onto their platform. And the way that they seem to have identified doing that is to have a huge range of content there. I use the content word unironically for a change. But they do have a huge they do have a huge range of different stuff on there, and that's one of the interesting things, and that's one of the good things about Netflix. Whether video games follow that model, I don't know, but if you look at Microsoft's probably the leader in trying to Netflixize the video game industry. Microsoft is certainly not investing in a diversity of experiences yet. They're buying a lot of developers, which might imply that they're going to have that kind of range, but then you look at what Microsoft what Ninja Theory, now part of Microsoft, announced at E3, and it looks like Microsoft is telling Ninja Theory to do more Microsoft games. So
no, there's going to be more games from Ninja Theory outside of the Microsoft games, but yeah, it's probably going to be ruined.
It's just, what's Double Fine going to make under Microsoft? The same things that Double Fine made before, or what Microsoft wants Double Fine to make? So it could go either way at the moment. We're still very early at the stage of Netflixizing video games, but it's definitely something we should, I guess, be aware of and be wary of. And that was E3. That plus the cheering crowds. That was
Cheering crowds.
E3. Jesus, those cheering crowds. Horrible people. Did you realize you have to pay like $1,000 to get a ticket into E3?
Is it that much? I thought it was like 200.
No.
I thought the public tickets were like $200.
Oh, sorry. I meant to get into the good stuff, like the VIP tickets where you get to.
You probably have to pay extra tickets to go to the.
The ones where you get to go and like be a hollering idiot in the conferences. I think those tickets are like $1,000. And
yeah, but if you be a hollering idiot, then you get a free copy of the game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, but you have to pay $1,000 to be a hollering idiot and get a free copy of the game.
On that note, we're going to go to some music and then give it a wrap.
Music or just hollering idiots for 3 minutes?
Hollering idiots for 3 minutes.
We'll play the Zelda trailer music.
No, I'm going to go for something completely different here because. On a note, because we're back to regular scheduled programming next week and talking about games rather than shows, I'm playing Super Dimension Neptunia at the moment. That's the game I'm playing for a review.
Good.
So I'm going to put some music from Hyper Dimension Neptunia on here.